You should have permission now.
Hi, Eric. I'm Chris from JoBlo.com. How you doing?
Chris, how are you?
Really excited to talk to you. I'm actually a massive fan of yours. I have been for years. This is an honor, sir. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, cheers. Thanks very much.
So I really enjoyed this movie. Liked it a lot. And I wanted to ask you, so it's been a while, I think, since you've done a movie in Australia. I guess since Romulus, My Father, which is the same director as this movie. And I was wondering, what was it about The Dry that made you want to make this your return to Australian cinema?
Oh, I love the book, Jane Harper's novel, The Dry, that this film's based on. I just loved it. I thought it was an incredible thriller, whodunit, but had a different element in the sense that it was very emotional. And I love her depiction of the landscape of this drought-ridden regional country town of Keir that's a fictitious place, and felt very protective of the opportunity to do the adaptation. And so really wanted to get involved.
Well, I thought it was really visually striking too, right? I mean, that was, especially like you said, it's a fictional place, but it was so evocative of, of the land and the way it looked. But one of the things that's interesting too is that I find that you don't often get like lavish, well, I don't want to say lavish, but big large scale thrillers like this, as a movie. Usually I would end up seeing it, as a TV series, which is great, but it was really refreshing to see it as a 2-hour movie that was shot with like a real sense of scope. And I was just wondering what your thoughts about that were.
Yes, it was. Thank you for that. It was very, very deliberate. It's one of the first films that was shot in large format here in Australia on that sensor. And we wanted to make the most cinematic version. It was always our intention for this to be a cinema release film, which is what it was in Australia. It was a massive film down here in Australia. And that was always our intention, was to make the most cinematic version, because we were gifted this incredible story in an amazing landscape. And that is an essential character in the film. So it wasn't just out of being film nerds that we wanted this to be a immersive filmic experience. It is an essential character and adds to the drama of the story. And we shot beginning of 2019 at the height of the drought here in Australia. And that really just adds every element to the story.
Well, like you said, I was reading, it's one of the biggest Australian films of all time, though, isn't it?
It is, yes. And it just really, adds to the, incredible thrill of making the film, that it was such a hit. And so, it's something we feel very fortunate for.
I've always been a really big fan of Australian movies, and especially the Australian new wave from the 70s and the 80s. And it does seem to me that every 10 years or so, there's an amazing crop of movies that come off from Australia. And I think you were part of a really great wave with Chopper, which is legitimately one of my favorite movies, especially your performance in it. I just think it's the greatest. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on that were, about the Australian industry in general and where it's going.
Yeah, well, look, there's some amazing talent down here. It's a very small industry, so I like it when people kind of judge us on a kind of 5-year cycle rather than every year or two, because the pool is just so small, right, in terms of how many films we churn out. But this year has been pretty amazing. The Dry was, the beginning of a kind of big theatrical resurgence down here in Australia, with a couple other films like Penguin Bloom and High Ground and so forth. So hopefully we're setting the trend and proving that there is a huge appetite for people to see these films in the cinema. And all of those films were very deliberately made, not for streaming services, but for the cinematic experience.
Which is kind of a shame, though, that unfortunately it's opening in a time that movie theaters are largely closed down over here. It is too bad, though, because I think a movie like The Dry would have really been great on the big screen, right?
Absolutely. And as I said before, every decision that we made on the film was for that experience. And I do think it's different. I can tell the difference when a film has been shot with the TV streaming end in mind, and when it's been shot knowing it's a theatrical. So Rob and I, our director, we're film buffs, and we wanted to do everything possible to make it as big screen as possible.
Personal question here: would you ever play Chopper Read again?
No, it was a once off, and the fact that you feel so affectionate for it proves that you should only do these things once.
A friend of mine was a pen pal with him. It was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed the movie.
Thanks very much, Chris. Great to meet you.
Thanks. Good to meet you too.
Cheers.